for example, like DMs, a lot of shit goes down in the DMs. It's like pretty nasty. So we were like, we're not going to have DMs on the app, at least to start with. Then the second thing was like, okay, well, when people are expressing themselves, like, do we want to be another app where you can upload a selfie? Like, no, we think there's enough of those apps. They exist. You can go find them. We want to be an app that's not for performance. We want to be about self-expression. So in Blue Fever, you can only create content from pre-vetted media.
All right, y'all, what's going on? It is your boy Easy Bake Oven. What's up, y'all? So today it's a little different, all right? Now, I used to hear ads run through my stuff for other people. All right, this is probably the first real time the ad is for me. All right, so P.S.A Prodigy Sport Advantage Stations has expanded far beyond just the podcast. It is now a writing service, all right? And at that, a ghostwriting service. So we do it anonymously and take care of your needs, all right? Homework assistant, product and profile descriptions, grant writing, resumes, cover letters, templates, books, ghostwriter book too. Anything you can think of, articles, all that good stuff. PSA the Ghostwriter Solution can do it. So go over to PSAthepodcast.com and you can see all the services there with all their descriptions. Okay, because I know I missed some. And also you can reach out to me at theprodigyperspective@gmail.com and we can take care of all of that for you too. Peace. All right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're at in the world. Welcome to another episode of P.S.A the Mental Health Podcast. Your favorite podcast. Well, it might not be. I don't know. But you listen to it, so there it is. Because I know some of y'all have just so many podcasts y'all listen to. I hope everybody's doing good today. I'm doing good. It is the day this is recording is a Saturday, so it's good weather outside. It's Houston. It's hot already, and we just doing it like we always do. The live streams have been doing well. Y'all like that. And I think I'm gonna go ahead and let y'all know now that I think things can change because I know how y'all will come back at me and be in my DMs and telling me I'm a liar. You'll be quick to call me a liar. But I think the live streams are here to stay. That even once the season ends, the season's gonna end looking like January 4th. That'll be the last episode of season 7. I think we're gonna keep the live streams going. I think I'm gonna take maybe a few weeks off and then get back on, and then from February on to whenever the next season starts, we're just gonna keep the live streams going on Monday. So yeah. But let's get into today's episode. So I think that we sometimes as humans and sometimes as men kind of forget that we think that healing, we think transformation, we just think blessings have to come in a certain way. And sometimes that's not always the case. So let's get into the week's meme. So I said, don't knock the method used to bring about your full healing and transformation. All right. Inspiration comes from just 2 places today. Inspiration comes from a quote I really like. This says, "Nothing is original. Steal from everywhere that resonates with inspiration that fuels your imagination. Devour old films, new films, music, books, paintings, photographs, poems, dreams, random conversation, architecture, bridges, street signs, trees, clouds, bodies of water, light and shadows. Select only things to steal from that speak directly to your soul. If you do this, your work and theft will be authentic. Authenticity is invaluable. Originality is non-existent, and don't bother concealing your thievery. Celebrate it if you feel like it. In any case, always remember what Jean-Luc Godard said. It's not where you take things from, it's where you take them to." This is by Jim J. I don't agree with everything about the theft thing. I do believe originality is real. But I like the concept of, taking inspiration from places. And that's kind of how these episodes go. A lot of these episodes are derived from inspiration from things. So, yeah. All right. The last, my other inspiration. So it says, what is context of 1 Kings 17 and Elijah being fed by ravens? And this comes from M. Madanzi. And I'm going to quote from that article a little later as we go along. So be prepared for that. All right, y'all, let's get into the segment. Y'all favorites, happy hour. All right, so for today's happy hour, I got a few things I want to talk about. Actually, I'd lied. I only got one thing I want to talk about. So it's the holiday season, you know, and we're getting closer and closer to the end of the year. And, people like to reflect. I hate to be one of those people, but I got to be one of those people. If you're just now preparing for the new year, if you're getting prepared for the new year now, or you wait until the new year starts, you're already too late. Doesn't mean you can't play catch up. I want you to understand that. But you rather have been ahead. So, like, I know some people who said they were already in 2024 and 2025, the middle of 2023. So keep that in mind. But again, everybody is different, and just because you behind don't mean you can't catch up now. But one thing I want to speak on, and I may have to do a full episode on this, and I briefly have discussed this kind of in the show here and there a few times, but what is it when it comes to knowing when to let somebody go? So I know what you're thinking. What you mean let them go? Like, when is it time for you to say it's time for you to go, like, completely? And not on no like petty stuff, or like, oh, you aren't good enough for me, or, well, kind of, but not on no necessarily like no petty stuff when you choosing yourself. I've learned a lot of people struggle with choosing themselves first. I'm not sure, what maybe triggered it to be like that, or why is it like that. Well, a lot of people struggle with choosing themselves and putting themselves first. Like, it's not just about, I think sometimes we as humans get caught up in who we've known for the longest, and we think that just because we've known somebody for a long period of time, they're supposed to be there forever. That's what we would like. That's not always the case. So my thing is, what happens when that happens? What do you do? I think that when it does happen, I think you should pay attention to the signs. The signs are always there. The signs are always there. Whether you really pay attention or not, they're there. And sometimes I think that we're so caught up in, some of us really legit, struggle with telling people how we feel. And but the thing is, if you don't tell them how you feel, your actions are gonna say it, your body language is gonna say it, and you're gonna be, and I say this respectfully, dying on the inside. And it's not worth it. It's not worth it. So moving forward, I just want us to, as we close out this year and going into the next year, kind of just sit and just with yourself and kind of just analyze who is there for me, who isn't, what are some traits maybe that I don't want to be around. And the thing with leaving people alone sometimes is it's not always forever, one. And two, it might not be like a full like 0 to 100. It may be like, I was around you all this time, I may have to cut back being around you as much. And then sometimes some people like, may I need to be around these type of people more. So keep that in mind. And when it comes to me, I'm very strategic with what I'm very strategic with what I like and what I know I can't be around. You know what I mean? So, but we'll get into that another day. So there it is. Okay, y'all. So I have another great interview today. Someone who I think I think this guest is a good one, because I definitely feel as though she's quick on the feet. I've seen that behind the scenes. So I definitely think we're going to see that in today's episode as we talk about an app that she created. How many people create apps? You know what I mean? And then watch this. Create apps and they're successful. Okay? So let's go ahead and introduce my guest for today. Hello, how's it going?
Hey, it is going well. I am candidly waking up. It's like Saturday morning in Los Angeles, so I'm usually a morning person, but I stayed up a little bit later last night, and so I'm waking up. But I'm excited to be waking up with you all and talking about my favorite topic, which is our mental health.
All right, good stuff. So obviously I can see you, YouTube can see you. But for the audio people, can you tell the people what's your name, where you're from, and you already said where you live, but you can say it again just for
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
for us.
So my name is Greta, Greta McAnany. I grew up between Austin, Texas, and Silicon Valley, and then went down to school in Los Angeles and stayed there ever since. And I don't know, I wasn't given any questions ahead of time, so I'm really excited to see what gets thrown at me. But I stayed down there and worked in media, and then moved into tech. And yeah, I've been an LA girl and
Okay.
still here now. How
All
about
right.
you, Izzy? Where are you based?
So I'm from St. Louis, but I went to Texas Southern, so I live in Houston. So,
Oh,
you know,
nice.
yeah.
Nice, nice, nice. Cool.
So tell the people, you kind of briefly touched on it, but tell the people fully what it is that Greta does so that they can know like what she does.
Gratitude. That's such a big question. Well, I'll tell you what I do now, and then I'll tell you kind of what I think I do kind of more high level outside of my job, because I think a lot of us uh tend to focus on, okay, professionally, everybody asks that question, hey, nice to meet you, so what do you do? And then
Yeah,
everybody's like, well, I do this. And I started off in film, and it's a tough industry. And so I always think there's a difference between like a career and a job, right? Like sometimes you can be
definitely.
working on your career, but you have to have a job to support you along the way. Right now, I'm really fortunate that my career is my job. And I am the CEO and co-founder of Blue Fever, which is a mental health and well-being like companion and community for Gen Z and Gen Alpha that essentially helps you express yourself, get support from the community, and also from our empathetic AI Blue. And I think me as a person, what I'm doing and trying to do, I believe I was put on this earth to help people realize their potential and kind of
Okay.
break through barriers. And so that's like what I am. Like, I'm a storyteller who helps people unlock their potential. And on the side, because I've had so many founders come to me over the course of my years of running Blue Fever and kind of ask for feedback and advice, that I started a small coaching practice as well. So I also coach like early stage founders, typically founders who are not your like white straight male founder. So people who are a little bit different coming to the startup space, VC space, and I work with them. So that's what I do. I don't know. Is that the answer you were looking for?
No, it was more than enough. So good job. It was definitely there and some. So that's good stuff to know. I like that. Just to kind of touch on that, like how you said that you have, what I like about people is when they have multiple kind of like streams, but also like you have multiple jobs that are all things you like to do. And I think so much in this society we're so caught up in just trying to make money, and it's good to see so many people on this platform, especially who talk about the things that they love to do and they're getting paid to do it. And it's just more hope. And it's for people who want to jump in and take that leap of faith and try those things. And it's like, well, and then you have guests like you, who is so many, and my guests are so diverse to where they all do literally any and everything you think of. And it's so many ways and avenues to make money. So good job with that. And for creating an app, because I wouldn't even know where to start with that. So, in a world, this is my first question. In a world where digital interaction often gets a bad rap, especially coming from, concerning mental health,
Yeah.
how does Blue Fever navigate the fine line between digital wellness and digital fatigue?
That's a great question. I'm gonna answer this question, but I'm gonna start off about like tapping into something that you said in the intro, which I was backstage listening, and I was like, oh yeah, like you were talking about people kind of like, we're always on our phones, we're using all these platforms. And one of the reasons that we started Blue Fever was because in my first career as a filmmaker, I made this film and I lived all across America for about 3.5 years. And I was everywhere from like East LA to rural Mississippi to Texas, Florida, New York. And one of the things I saw was that young people were self-medicating with media. And I
Mm.
think now, like, that's something we're all doing, especially after the pandemic. It's like, pick your poison. Like, are you gaming? Are you on Netflix, TikTok, Instagram, whatever? And I don't think it's all bad. And that's the difficult, like, and I think that's what you're getting to at your question. It's like, we have a physical life. We've always had a physical life, but now we have a digital life. And having a digital life it's just the reality. We can't get around it. So navigating digital wellness and digital fatigue looks different for everybody. And the way that we self-medicate looks different for everybody. And that's why it's such a really challenging topic. I think that if I start off at the individual level, like at Blue Fever, we really encourage people to set their own boundaries, right?
Okay.
Like using any kind of technology, like Izzy, like you're going to use your phone different than I use my phone, and you're going to have different stuff going on in your life and different triggers and whatever. So you got to set your own boundaries. But I think there's also this like massive responsibility that tech companies have to create like platforms that like bake in opportunities for people to have digital wellness. So at Blue Fever, we went ahead and initially we didn't build an app. We very accidentally built a text message platform
Okay.
where we had this like empathetic AI named Blue, like texting you and asking you how you are, and then curating like memes, videos, content to like help you get through specific emotional situations. And so what we learned from that, we grew that to like 500,000 users. And what we learned is there's these like core principles that the people need for digital wellness. And one of them is they need to feel safe, right? You need to feel safe so that you can express yourself, because something that we see a lot with young people today is that they are so afraid of being judged. I mean, I am too, right? Being judged on larger social media platforms that they don't express. And when you don't express, then that increases the risk for anxiety, depression, all of that. And if you don't express, then you can't get the support, right? If you don't speak up, other people can't support you, and Blue Fever as a platform can't guide and support you. So when we think about digital wellness, like we really have focused as a platform on creating this like framework and foundation that makes it a lot easier for you to experience wellness on the platform and a lot harder to have digital fatigue. That being said, like, I don't recommend anyone's on Blue Fever for like, 6 hours at a time. Like, get off your phone, go do some stuff. Like, and we don't optimize for time spent. We optimize for like the quality of interaction you have. And I think that that's like the biggest difference of like looking at digital wellness versus digital fatigue. It's like a personal decision that you have to. It's like personal boundaries and a personal framework you have to create for yourself, because nobody knows you better than you, and you're the pilot, right, in your life. But then also these larger platforms and smaller platforms like Blue Fever, like we got to be able to have some, we got to be looking out for your well-being and have some kind of levers and kind of design in there that can help you achieve that.
Okay. Good answer. Good answer. Good stuff. And it's a lot of stuff we definitely gonna add to as we go along, because it was some questions I knew planned on asking that you kind of covered early. So that's good.
Okay,
Okay.
sorry. Yeah, I just
No,
yeah, I'm a
good.
talker. So Izzy, cut me off. I want this to, feel interactive. Cut me off. Let's have a conversation.
All right. So now I have a few words for you, and there's no right or wrong answer. I have 3 words. I want you to tell me
Okay.
first thing that comes to mind when you hear them. All right. So when you hear the word healing, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
The first thing that came to mind, like the first word was hard. Like it's
Okay.
hard to heal. That's today. Yeah.
When you hear the word app, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
I mean, of course I'm thinking about Blue Fever, so I thought about Blue Fever.
And when you hear the word unconventional, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Fun.
Okay.
Like word fun. I don't know. I'm just getting like simple words. I'm thinking unconventional. I'm thinking fun, and I'm thinking um like imagination. I don't know. I just see this like fun imagination, unconventional. But again, I'm a startup founder, so for me unconventional is like super fun.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So the definition of healing is the process of making or becoming sound or healthy again. The definition of app is an application, especially as downloaded by a user to a mobile device. And then unconventional, not based on conforming to what is generally done or believed. So I kind of agree with what you said about fun, because you're kind of doing something outside the norm. So for me, doing things outside the norm is fun. So that works for me. All right, so let's move into the first, well, not the first, but one of the segments for today, one of the ones where we kind of get into things, which is what does this have to do with mental health? All right, so before we get into that, can you take us down memory lane and through a moment when you realized that the traditional mental health resources were failing today's youth? And then how did you know that this was the time that Blue Fever needed to start?
That's a big question. I'm trying to think of, everybody, like, I don't know how familiar the people are who are listening with the startup space, but I think a lot of the narrative in the startup space and VC space and tech space is like, oh my gosh, there was this one moment and it really just, like, I got the idea and then everything happened from there. But the truth is, it's like iterative, right? It's like one
Yeah.
thing and then the next and then the next.
Yeah.
I think that there was this moment, if I'm gonna try to figure out what that moment is, because I don't think it works like that, but it was a collection of moments where initially, we had this belief, like when I moved from being a filmmaker, and working in media and then I had a licensing company and I saw how behind Hollywood was. And but I also saw that people were, as we talked about, self-medicating with media, and they were using it to feel better, right? Like, like when we watch something and we're like, oh, like I just want to cheer up. Or maybe it's like, oh, I just want to cry and I can't cry. So I'm going to watch this thing just to like
Right.
get it out, right? Or chill out or whatever it might be. And so the very first iteration of Blue Fever, the idea was, well, what if we could build like a Netflix that was curated by mood and emotion? And it
Oh,
was almost
wow.
like a mental health Netflix. I'm telling you, it was an iterative process. There wasn't like this like overnight moment, but like, it's like, what if we could build that and essentially like, you watch something and you know that when you're watching it, like it's kind of meeting you where you are and helping you get to where you want to be. I don't know how familiar you are with cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, but that's kind of how it's like it's similar to that, but like a kind of unconventional take on it.
Right.
And so the first platform we had was this like really shitty Squarespace site where we curated a bunch of digital media and then we like tagged it by mood and emotion. And so we started like emailing people, right, about it for marketing, and we started text messaging people. And then there was this moment on text message where like, we text, it would be this like outbound text. It was like, hey, are you feeling stressed right now? Like, watch this video, blah, 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 blah. Or are you feeling anxious? Are you going through a breakup, studying for finals, whatever? And then people started writing back and people were like, how did you know I felt that way? How did
Yeah.
you know I was going through this? How did you know in this moment in my life that like this was a thing I was dealing with? And we were like, whoa, so many people are not feeling heard and seen, and they are not. And so like we decided to write back and start having a conversation, which we never intended to do on text message, and that's how our first product took off. But it was like, oh, everybody is holding so much inside of themselves, and they are feeling like they need to be unseen and understood so that they can get the support that they need. And that was a big aha moment for me of like, we need different tools to meet people where they are. And I think that was like that was a moment. I don't know if it was specifically I was like, "Oh, the mental health system is broken," but it was like, "Oh, like people are carrying around so much, and like what if we could meet them and provide these moments for people to express themselves and then get support? Like how much easier would life be?"
Definitely. And like I said, it just, and once again, it goes to one of my favorite quotes is you always starts with one thought. And that can either be really good or really bad. Sometimes it's kind of in the difference. Like if you indifferent, like if you just like, oh, I think I want Wendy's today. I don't know. Something
Yeah,
small
yeah.
like that. But it all starts with a thought. And for you to say something like it kind of piggybacks off the comment I made earlier about the inspiration about where it says nothing is really original. I might have to do a full episode on that personally,
You know
but I
what?
mean,
Izzy, I need to grab something. So I'm completely reorganizing my office right now.
okay.
I need to find this thing because when you said that, there's one of my favorite books is called Steal Like an Artist. And
Oh,
it
okay.
basically says that no, it's somewhere, it's like such a mess in here, but it essentially says that no piece of art is original. And in order to create, you need to, oh, it's right here. Oh my gosh. Here we go. Steal Like an Artist.
Oh,
It's one of my
wow.
favorite books. It's a New York Times bestseller and essentially talks about how like if you are just so hung up on being original, don't. It talks about good theft versus bad theft. Oops, if you can see it?
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
there we go.
there we go, there we go.
Yeah, so it's super cool, and so when you're saying, like, we're all here to create on a previous episode, I think you were talking about, like, we're all here to produce, like, what are you producing?
Right.
Like, I think there's this myth that, producing or creating happens in one moment and it's totally original. It's often not, and the best creators I find, having been a creator and a storyteller all my life, is that you're really good at you have high levels of empathy and you're really good at like pattern matching and then kind of taking the things that you need to create, right? Something new. Because the art of making art is taking all these disparate parts that exist and then just putting them together in a new way.
But that's the thing, I see different artists, singers, rappers, songwriters, and they all say the same thing. They talk about how they was inspired by this singer or this artist,
Totally.
and talk about how that inspired their artistry like this. And like, so, and in some of them, you would never think somebody like one of the Migos would be super inspired by Michael Jackson. You would never think that. But his artistry, he says, is inspired a lot by Michael Jackson. So you
That's
just
so
never
cool.
know.
Yeah.
Right, you just never know who's inspired by and then on the flip side, you never know what impression you're leaving for people. Where you think, and I have to go back again. Shout out to Big Dog's podcast. When he told me that when he first started his podcast is blowing up now, and he talked about like when I first started getting the podcast, you were one of the first ones I studied. I was like, I was like, really? And he was just like, yeah, I like your setup, your segues, your segments. He was just like everything about it. So I kind of kept up with that. So I really, it just, you never know who you're inspiring. You never know what you can draw inspiration from. And my mind is all over the place. So
I love that. I was actually talking to one of my investors yesterday for Blue Fever. And I was talking about how Blue Fever was really inspired by Pinterest. And I thought like very similar. And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah, like you wouldn't, we don't like fully look like Pinterest. But when I think about what we are, we're like a Pinterest meets like a Reddit, but for mental health. And she was like, oh, I never heard you say that before. And I'm like, yeah, you're just taking pieces.
yeah. But that's the thing. Sometimes the innovative mind is challenged by most. I'll say that like that. So sometimes when we have those mindsets, it's just like, I don't see how that's gonna work. And then it's like you see it in your brain, they don't see it. And then when they see the final product, they're like, oh,
Yeah, but it
okay.
takes so much courage and confidence and resilience to believe when other people don't see it and believe it, right? Like, and I think that that's like a really something that I know I struggle with, and I see a lot of people struggle with. Is like, it's like in our culture we're so afraid of failure, and even if you see something in your mind, you're like, okay, well, if I'm not getting validation that other people see it, like, can you have the courage to actually bring that thing to life, right, and birth that creative thing? I don't know. That's just it's hard, and I see a lot of people not going for it because even though they see it because they're afraid.
So this is the mental health podcast as well as the mental health segment. So what would be your inspiration to somebody who would feel as though I have this creativity, I struggle with the courage, but then at the same time, I see people who all are these big stars in
Yeah.
their own industries. What would be like your tip to that person?
I think my tip would be I would say one, I felt how you feel and I feel it almost every day. The key is
Mhm.
not feeling it, right? Like you're going to have
Right.
those feelings, but the key so it's feel those feelings, acknowledge them, and then do it anyways. Like have a bias for action. So if you have this idea of what you want to create, have this bias for action and go create it. And if you acknowledge those feelings, the negative feelings, let them be, have this bias for action where you actually go do it, and then not be attached to what the outcome is. Right. So it's like high intention, low attachment. If you can know, like, if you're just going to do it and your goal is to just create something and learn from it, and then you can repeat that process over and over again, you're going to get somewhere really awesome.
Good.
That is what I would tell people, because oftentimes we think that our first shot, because we see everybody on social media, right, killing it. And we're like, oh my God, like they just did that one video and it blew up. But I have to tell you, like, there are so many, like I have one friend who blew up, is like one of the biggest influencers on social. And previous to this, she made so many videos before she blew up. Like not good ones, like people didn't engage with them. I was kind of like, what are you doing? But she just kept going. Like, I just was like, I don't understand what you're trying to
Yeah.
create, like, but cool. And she just kept going. So I'd say, like, if you can have this bias for action and not be attached to this outcome, but keep on learning, those are
Right.
the people who succeed. Yeah. And that's like the grit, because Blue Fever, like, I'll tell you, Blue Fever or the feature films that I made, it was a lot of cycles. And you just don't get somewhere good if you don't fail and learn from it.
Absolutely. Okay. So I got some mental health tips. So how this correlates with mental health, excuse me. So the first one is increased awareness and monitoring. So many health and wellness apps offer features that allow users to track their physical and mental well-being, such as exercise, sleep pattern, stress levels. And then, according to a study published in the Journal of Medical Internet Research, 75% of young adults reported increase of awareness in their health and lifestyle choices through the use of health apps. This increased awareness empowers young men to better understand their mental health triggers and patterns. It enables them to identify stressors, mood fluctuations, and sleep disturbances, which are crucial in preventing or managing mental health issues. Then the second one I like, it says access to mental health resources and support. A substantial number of health and wellness apps provide access to mental health resources such as stress management techniques and, as you mentioned earlier, cognitive behavioral therapy exercises. According to a survey by the National Alliance of Mental Health Illness, of 60% of millennials reported using mental health apps to cope with stress and anxiety. These apps can be particularly helpful for young men who may be reluctant to seek traditional mental health support, and they offer more accessible and discreet ways to access tools and information to improve their mental well-being. So let me just say this. Y'all use these apps and these phones to do other stuff you don't need to be doing and try to be low-key and discreet. Then use it for your mental health then, because you can. If you're too, I'm so glad it's still not all the way there, but I'm so glad, especially as a Black man, having, that so many, I still have friends who may say things like, I don't need therapy. My friends are our therapists. You know what I'm saying? And to an extent, but they cannot provide the proper training and the proper, theoretical. I can't get the words out the
Well,
tip.
here's what I'm going to say. Friends are great. Having a strong peer group and social circle of people who support you is like a critical part of building mental health.
Right, right,
But it's like you kind of have to have your whole care team, right? And you can think about your phone as part of your care team, and you have that app that you use, then you have your friend group. I think that people get in this mindset of like, oh, well, like I have my friends, why would I need a therapist? Or I have that, like, it's not either or, it's and. And so you got
right.
your phone, you got your friends, like your friends are not equipped to maybe like bring out things in you that like you didn't even know were holding you back. Like I had a session with my therapist like last year, and I was like, yeah, this thing happened to me, but like it doesn't really like it doesn't affect me anymore. And then she just kind of said some shit, and I was like, oh my God, it's affected how I've like approached my entire life. But like, I don't think I would have, like, you need an outside perspective and somebody who's clinically trained. And so I
Right.
just think it's like, yeah, like, I don't know. It's having that whole care team and figuring out what your care team looks like.
Exactly, exactly. Which is funny because it leads to the third point. We in sync today. Community and social support. Many
Yeah.
health and wellness apps foster a sense of community and social support among users. For example, fitness and diet apps often include social features where users can share their progress and connect while others pursuing similar goals.
Yeah.
According to a report by Pew Research Center, 64% of millennials value the social support aspect of health apps, and it helps with engaging with like-minded individuals and can reduce feelings of isolation. So then this is my question to you. What measures does Blue Fever take to ensure that advice provided is psychologically sound and safe, considering it is a community-generated AI model?
Yeah, that's a big question. So I'm going to start off high level. I'm sorry if my answers are too
They've
loud,
been perfect.
too long, but okay, I'm going to start at a high level.
You good.
Blue Fever is a mental health app, not a mental illness app. And
Good.
oftentimes, when you hear mental health, there's this unconscious bias for people to think mental illness. But the truth is, 100% of us have mental health, right? Not 100% of us have mental illness. And so, like, an increasing amount of us do have mental illness, right? Which would be anxiety, depression. It could be, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, etc. But like, everyone has mental health, just like everyone
Right.
has physical health. So I want to like set the record straight on that. So with Blue Fever, like we really focus on how do you, for all those moments in between therapy, how do you have the because if you are privileged enough to be able to find a therapist you like and afford a therapist, or even find one these days because there's like not enough, like how do you have that support in between that hour that you go every week or every month or whatever it might be. And so at Blue Fever, I talked about this earlier, but we have these core product principles that we've designed the app with. So we call our technology like anti-toxicity technology. So we start off
Okay.
with like the design of the app and say like, okay, well, we know people want community support, but communities can get real ugly real quick, right? Like shit gets toxic. On one of your other, or no, you were saying this in your intro that you're like, yeah, you people be DMing me and telling me like this and that, like, like
Yeah.
that's the reality when you put yourself out there on social in any capacity. And I see now with the conflict in the Middle East, like social media is a cesspool. Like people are being mean when we need like love and compassion the most. So at Blue Fever, we said, okay, we're not aiming to be a social network. We want this to be a place for mental health and community mental health, and then also your own journey. So in the community aspect, we started with the design and we said, okay, what are the design features that we can put into place that are going to create wellness? And what are the kind of features that often create the most toxicity? So for example, like DMs, a lot of shit goes down in the DMs. It's like pretty nasty. So we were like, we're not going to have DMs on the app, at least to start with. Then the second thing was like, okay, well, when people are expressing themselves, like, do we want to be another app where you can upload a selfie? Like, no, we think there's enough of those apps. They exist. You can go find them. We want to be an app that's not for performance. We want to be about self-expression. So
Okay.
in Blue Fever, you can only create content from pre-vetted media. So it's like we have our templates and our backgrounds and our colors, and then we have pre-vetted like GIFs and stickers, and we're going to be adding audio and video. Again, that's all this like pre-vetted library. So so that you have like a lesser chance, right, of some not good stuff happening. Then we also have like, I should have said this first, but like the platform's anonymous. This is like table stakes for people to feel like they're safe enough to express their mental health, because like, after you go to a therapy session, you're not going on like Twitter or like TikTok and being like, let me tell you all about my trauma and my self-love issues, right? Like, and all your friends are seeing it. Like, you're not doing that. So like our audience is primarily like Gen Z, and they were like, look, like we need to be anonymous to feel safe. Like we have avatars, right? So we can be identified, but we need to feel, if we're going to bring all parts of ourselves here, like for our mental health, we don't want it to be traced back to us, right? To people at school, all of that. So there's like design features. Then we have back end technology. And I think you were talking about this, and I can talk about AI more, but if you want me to expand, I can. But we have like back end moderation that we've built, so that if somebody is trying to post something that maybe would be harmful for the community. Oh, and I forgot to mention this. We allow users to like label content that they see as triggering or toxic. So you can put
Mm,
trigger overlays on stuff, and then
that's
you
nice.
can start to like curate your feed. And we have back end moderation. So say if you come on the platform and you're like I want to kill myself, right? Like, because we know suicide is the second leading cause of death for young people in America today. That is a situation where you are dealing with some mental illness. Like, this is not just like maintaining your mental health, and we want to get you to the right resource. Like, we want to get you, your friend group's not going to cut it right now. You need to go talk to a therapist and like a specially trained person. So we
Right.
actually say, hey, you can express this, but it's not going to go publicly because it could be triggering to people. And we're going to get you to that right resource. And here's the person that you should call or text. And then the final piece of this is community guidelines of like, when a group of people agree to behave in a certain way, magic can happen. If you all agree that you're going to be hateful and mean, then you're going to be hateful and mean. But if you agree this is going to be a safe space and this is how we treat each other in this space, we found that that's really beneficial. So I'll go over it again. It's like design choices, back-end moderation, and community guidelines. That is how we keep the community part of the app safe. But it's been a long journey. It's like not an easy one because,
Yeah.
like this is a challenge that all platforms have.
Right. No, for real, definitely trial and error. And I definitely gonna speak on the comment you made when you said People will be so quick to get on social. He said, "No, hey everybody, I just left therapy." I've told somebody to delete this. Like when people post certain things, like you didn't have to tell nobody that. And not saying that you may never, but
But
in
they're
this
looking for a
season,
space for that, and it's not the space. This is not
right?
the space.
There's some things you can keep to yourself, and there's so many things I see on social media, and I'll be like, why did you? I'll be thinking like you didn't have to say that here. Like, did you want? So that's why I know some people want attention, and that's the unfortunate part because I'm sure even your app has had people. Let's talk about it. Have you had situations where people have come on and it's just like you kind
Yeah,
of
but
felt like they
that's
were a
that's what
troll?
we built the app for. Like, sometimes they're talking about stuff that's, like, more of a crisis situation, right? Like, I talked about, like, suicide, and it's like this community of your peers and people maybe a little bit older than you are not like, they're not here to help you with that, and people are desperate. But what we are at Blue Fever is, like, we're a place that, like, a lot of times our users would tell us, like, I used to write this in my notes app and so nobody could see, but now I write it on Blue Fever and just sharing it with other people, like it just feels better. But yeah, there's those posts on Blue Fever where you're like, whoa, you've been holding this in. You've been holding this in and you really needed to tell someone. And that's the, like, when we talk about like a care team of like, well, what's appropriate for a therapist and your friends and this and that. It's like, I think we're all just trying to navigate like what are these spaces in our digital lives where we can bring this part of ourselves, right? I always like joke that like Instagram's the bragging platform and Twitter's the shouting platform. Like, what's the platform where we can come and just like unload the stuff that's been like living in our mind, that's been eating us up, right? That is like kind of taking control of ourselves. And that's like why we built Blue Fever. And also the stuff that we want to celebrate that might feel super weird to share on social media, like, hey, I got an A on this test, or hey, I'm doing something really fun this weekend. I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like when people like celebrate stuff on social media, other people can be like, why are you bragging? Or why are you this? And so it's like, can we have a space where we can just really be ourselves and not feel bad or self-conscious or like have this fear of somebody's going to judge me because I'm happy. I was just like talking
Right,
about this with someone, like a lot of people are struggling right now, but the people who are happy are like, I don't feel like I can say that I'm happy
right,
because everybody's struggling. And so like,
absolutely.
what about those people? How can we like celebrate our wins and have people be happy for us for our wins? Like, that's important too.
It's people intentionally sent on social media or used to just kind of be spiteful and just shady. So just knowing that can help sometimes a little bit because it's like, okay, I know you're just being used to just try to you're a troll. That's all you just want to do is troll.
Yeah,
So
those people need a hug and a therapy session. That's what those
for
people need.
for sure. All right, so now the basis of the episode centers around not knocking unconventional methods, right? So let me go to one of my sources. So from the article by Emma Danzy earlier, and this article it's called "From Why God Sending the Ravens to Feed Elijah Should Give You Hope in These Desert-Like Seasons." So it says this might seem like a strange story, but why would God provide Elijah in this way? Why would the Lord make him go live in an obscure, dry place? The context of 1 Kings 17 is during the rule of King Ahab and his wife Jezebel. So in this time, Elijah, they wanted him dead and all that. So it seemed like an odd location for him to go. So Priscilla Schreiner says that, well, in her Faith and Fire study, it says perhaps if God had chosen doves or robins to perform the twice daily turn down service, some kind of brilliant brainiac would come up with a scientific hypothesis describing how birds of that type might be capable of pinpointing a singular location day after day. So God used ravens for the job, which for those that don't know, was used to feed him in that dry place, ravens of all animals, to provide him in that dry
Ravens are
place.
so smart. Ravens are so, so smart.
And so like that, like her stance was, if it was a dove or a robin, it would have made sense, right? It makes sense. So the point that I'm coming off with for this is everything is not going to make sense all the time. Healing, like I said, you may say, oh, well, I need to go to a therapist to get my healing, right? some people, the therapist might have just been a starting point for you. You know what I'm saying? This therapist may work for this person, that therapist may not work for this person. We naturally may not believe an app can help us. You know what I'm saying? I might say, how can this app help me when I'm feeling suicidal, when I'm feeling like nobody likes me? And now I'm on an app like Blue Fever, where there are people here like me. They can't see me. They can know my struggles, but they may not be able to
They
see
see the
how I
real
look,
you, right? They
see the
see what's
real me.
underneath.
And of course, I'm sure relationships develop. So you might say, hey, follow my Instagram, get my number so that you can know the real me. But it's a platform for people to get comfortable. So I think that we should not shun how we get help. I don't think because that's what it is. It's the same correlation. We're shunning how we get help, shunning how somebody may bring about, whatever. You just never know how you can be provided for and who can be used as a method to help you. And I
Yeah,
think that,
well,
go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. Sorry, I have so many thoughts on this.
Well, I was gonna say something, I kind of lost it, but it'll come back. So good.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, like, again, going back to this, like, difference between mental health and mental illness,
Right.
I don't think we've been properly educated, and there I go, like, wagging my finger, I get really into this when my fucking hand starts waving, but, but, like, mental health is for everybody. The definition by the World Health Organization: mental health is the state of mental well-being that enables people to cope with stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn well and work well, and contribute to their community. It's an integral component of health and well-being that underpins our individual and collective abilities to make decisions, build relationships, and to shape the world we live in. It's a basic human right. Um, it exists on a complex continuum, which is experienced differently from one person to the next, with varying degrees of difficulty and distress, and potentially very different social and clinical outcomes. I didn't even do the full one, like that it goes on. But what I want to triple, underline, highlight for everybody is the part of it is complex and it is going to look different for everybody.
Hmm.
And there, I think the narrative we've been told, and I think this is because of our very reactive healthcare system, right? It's like how our healthcare system says, like, well, we're only going to treat you if you have a problem. Like if you have a problem, and then the only solution is to go to therapy. But we don't know, like, there's so many different ways that you can take care of your mental health. And I bet in the next 5 to 10 years, taking care of our mental health, we're going to have so many different tools and options that it's going to be similar to our physical health. Like, I don't know if any of you people use like ClassPass or any, like, there's so many fitness classes, right? There's no one right way to work out. Like
Right.
maybe I transition. Maybe I like doing like CrossFit. And then I'm like, no. Okay, I'm done with that. I want to do yoga. I think it's the same for your mental health. You have seasons of your life. And every season, some might be harder than others. So maybe in this season, you need a therapist. But then in the next season, you're like, you know what? Like this app and like my friends are good for me. But I think that's what makes mental health so hard, is like there's not one size fits all. And it
Right.
changes based on who you are in this moment. Because I know me before the pandemic is very different than me now. And I'm sure that's same for a lot of people. So
Yeah.
I just think that we don't understand what mental health actually is. And if we did, we would give ourselves a lot more grace and compassion and an openness, to your point, of like believing that maybe I should just try this. Maybe I should see like what
Right.
meditation can do for me, or this app or whatever.
Right. And the main thing is just being open to a new, like I said, a new method, being open to things not going how you planned them. And that's sometimes, and you can take that to just social events. You know how many nights I had that I didn't plan that was the best nights of my life.
Ugh.
So
And then when you get an expectation hangover, when you have this big night planned and then it doesn't go to plan, and you like can't get an Uber and can't get in the bar or whatever, and you're just like, this is the worst. And I thought this was going to be the best night ever.
right, you just kind of, I've learned that just in my life, you just kind of let stuff just kind of go with the flow. And a lot of times, and a lot of people don't know how to do that and struggle with that. But
Like, when you asked me about creativity earlier, of like, well, how do people who see these things and like don't know how to like do them, I think this is what you're saying is don't be attached to outcome. Because again, if you are working on your mental health and you are trying to get this specific outcome in this specific time period, That might not happen. You don't know what your mental health journey should look like. And so if you're not attached to outcome and you're more attached to the process of trying to become and become better and better and happier, like recently with my mental health, I've been like looking at a lot of like brain optimization stuff. I don't know, I've been like nerding out on that. And and I knew this before, but it's been kind of underlined for me recently is that our beliefs create our habits, right? What we believe creates our habits. And I was thinking about like, what kind of habits do I want to have? Like, I think I'm a pretty disciplined person in certain ways, and so I have like habits that create that. But I was like, just even asking this question of like, well, how do I create a habit out of my joy? Because I know when
Mm,
I'm joyful, I'm more curious, I'm more excited, I'm more resilient, I'm more open. But, like, how do I even create a habit out of that? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't have the answer, but the fact that I'm just even asking myself that question, I think is a good step in the right direction. But I'm not
definitely.
telling myself in 3 weeks, I'm gonna figure out this habit, right? Or in 60 days,
Right.
I'll have nailed it. And I think we need to have a lot more self-compassion with ourselves about the results, because the result that you're seeking might not necessarily be the thing that's best for you. And I'll say one more thing because again, I'm so passionate about this. One of the things I wish I had learned in my early 20s is the difference between feeling and form.
Mm,
And humans do things because we want to feel a certain way, right? Like we want to make money because we want to feel stable or powerful, or we want to have freedom, right? We want to feel a sense of freedom. We you know, like we go out right to those nights, like, and we want to feel like we're just having fun, right? And we want to feel connected to our friends. But oftentimes people only believe they can get a feeling if it comes in this form, right? Like,
right.
well, if I only have this job, then I can feel this thing. Or if I only, talk to my friends about my mental health, then like that's the only way, because a therapist wouldn't understand me. That's the only way I get to hear. And I think that there's just such a, you can feel a feeling and get to a feeling, and it can just have a different form that you didn't expect. And so if you're so attached to what the form looks like of a career or a person that you want to date or whatever, you might miss, right, the form, right, that this feeling is coming in, that's actually even better and going to get you to that feeling even more. So I think that that's also really important with mental health, is that you just like we're to know that we're chasing feelings and be aware of that, and just be really open to what form they come in.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that is a good point because it aligns with the next segment, which is I challenge that.
Sweet.
Okay, so I got another question, but then I'm gonna get into some other points. So, in context, excuse me, of rebellion against toxic societal norms, which is people like us do in different ways, as far as we go against the to toxic views of mental health, right? So, what role does Blue play in empowering its users to challenge these standards?
Mm. I think it is a rebellion today to speak your truth. Like, I think that's a rebellion to speak your authentic truth, and that is the first thing that Blue encourages people to do, is to share what's really going on with them.
Mhm.
I think I think that's first and foremost, because I think we all hold it all in, and then it manifests in weird ways, and anxiety, depression, anger, etc. Um, I think the second way that Blue, that it's, Blue, I don't know, encourages this rebellion, is that every time somebody chat now, Blue, just for everybody who's listening, is this empathetic AI that was born out of my desire as a teenager to feel heard and seen, and I was struggling with some stuff, and I thought what would solve my problem was having a magical big sister who could guide and mentor me. I was like, well, if I just had that, then like I could, like, I don't know, life would be so much easier. And so,
Right.
but instead I had an older brother with epilepsy and autism, and he couldn't show up for me in the ways that I thought he should, or thought a big sibling should. And so Blue is meant to be this like digital big sibling, this person who you can come to, who you can share things with, right? um as we talked, like this active rebellion of like being your authentic self. And then I think the second piece is like after every conversation with Blue wants to make you feel like the next step is possible. And I think that today, so much of our world is just like, and so much of the systems that exist are dedicated to beating you down and making you believe you should stay in your place, whatever that place is, right? Like based
Yeah.
on your race, your gender, your religious background, your socioeconomic background. And blue is like, no, there's always a next step. There's always
Right.
possibility. And I think that those two pieces, I think are pretty rebellious. I don't know if other people would, but I think that like I don't see a lot of people speaking their authentic truth and believing that they can be something more than what society tells them.
I've talked about it so many times on this podcast, and I didn't plan on talking about this, but people are just afraid to get canceled. But if you really pay attention, no one really gets canceled. They just gonna be mad at you for like 2 weeks, and then they'll be like, some people will still hold the grudge, but I just feel as though I'm a firm believer. There's a lot of stuff I don't agree with. It's a lot of these clowns with mics. People say I'm one of them, whatever, right? And I see so many people, some influencers and TikTokers. And one thing I can say, you could believe something I think is the at most stupidest thing I could ever believe. And some things I know for a fact is stupid that you believe that, right? But I respect authenticity and I respect people who are themselves. So even if you will get that from me, like I don't agree with that, but I respect the fact that you are that you believe it and
Well,
that
that you
you
have a point of view, that you've
right,
taken the
exactly.
time to cultivate a point of view.
Right. And everybody has a point of view, and that's the purpose of shows like this, where people can come on, we can agree to disagree, but hey, at least we can have that conversation. And somebody may agree with you. It's a talking point. I think even with, and you're a filmmaker, so I think you'll really get this. And like I said, I'm not, a TV producer and things yet. But one thing
I
that I
love
think
yet. Let me just say that that's the most powerful mental I told you I've been nerding out about brain stuff. That's the most one a really powerful tool that if you say like, "I'm not blah, blah, blah," and then you add "yet" to the end of it, right? It
Mhm.
trains your brain to believe that you're gonna get there, and that increases the likelihood that you will. I just, like, I wanna call that out for people that, like, you just, like, modeled that so perfectly, like, "I'm not this yet." Right? Because
Right.
if you fight for your
Yeah.
limitations, then you get to keep them. But if you fight for your, anyway, sorry, I just thought that was so great. Keep
No,
going.
you good. I
You're like,
definitely
"I'm not a
appreciate it.
TV producer yet."
Right. But I look at some of these, and not just scripted and unscripted. And I pay attention to movies, and I pay attention to podcasts and things where storytelling is present, producing is present. And a lot of times, these people lose. They're so quick to just make, and nothing wrong with telling a good story, but telling a good story always has a point for a reference for a conversation as a conversation starter.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times and a lot of the podcasts do it, but I think a lot of them are so caught up in trying to go viral that they lose of trying to have those authentic,
Well,
real,
sorry. Yeah, keep going. I just
and even television. I'll let you say that some of these shows, like back in the day when I rewatch old sitcoms, even whether they're from the 60s,
yeah.
70s, 80s, 2000, early 2000s, even the show such like Girlfriends that people wouldn't even think. There were so
Yeah.
many moments in that show where there were conversation starters, and if social media was present like it is now,
People would
that
be
would have
yep.
made, so yeah.
I agree, and I think that right now, the world that's been created online. And I think this is so true with the news, right? It's like the news is more interested in having clickbait of people just like sensational headlines because they get more eyeballs and then they make more money. So I think it's a fundamental problem with the revenue model there, but like people are just trying to get eyeballs and they're just trying to get people like to look at stuff. And I think that what we need, like you said, is quality content that is going to live beyond that viral moment, and it's going to live at our dinner table conversations Oh, I don't really eat at a dinner table. I sit on my couch and eat like a real, like all of us. But like, I'm just kidding. But like that's going to live on in the conversations of other people. And that's going to make people think and then go, oh, okay. Like I didn't think about that. What is my opinion on that? But I don't think that a lot of this content, I think what you're trying to say is like creates like moments for like critical thinking or inspiration.
Right. I mean, it's a viral moment and it's a conversation starter, but it's, oh, who's gonna pay all the bills? Oh, who's going to, what's another one? What's the other favorite one? As a woman, why are you not doing this? Or as a man, like those are conversation starters, but it's just that same toxic loop.
But
And
it's
it just
quality conversation. Like, what kind of
right,
conversations, like, should we, do we need to be having more conversations in our head and with our friends? I'll just take it like I'm a woman. Like, do I need to be having more conversations about how my body doesn't measure up to
right.
XYZ this, right? Like, do I need to be having more conversations about our inadequacies? Or do we need to be having more conversations that are gonna like push us forward, right? Like, and be healing. And that's why I think earlier when you said healing and I said hard, it's just like, I think that it's hard to healing is a process and that is hard. And we need more, I don't know, we need more conversations around how we can heal ourselves because only then we can like move forward and do awesome shit.
No, for sure. So, but the last question before I move to the next segment. So, do you have, and this is kind of my petty question since we're talking about the challenge section, do you have any like rival apps or any competitors? And not like, no, if I see y'all, I'm fighting you, but like a
Yeah.
Wendy's or in a McDonald's, something like that.
Yeah. It's a great question. I get asked this a lot. We don't have any apps that are directly competitive that do exactly what we do. I'd say that like there's a bunch of different apps that compete with different parts of our app, but I think that like our main competitor is like all the other things that you could be doing with your time, right? That
Mm,
you're like self-medicating with. Like, it's like are you going to be, I don't know. Are you going to be like hanging out with your friends? Are you going to be like scrolling through TikTok? Like, again, I don't think TikTok's like a direct competitor, right? But like, it's just like, how are you going to spend your time? And are you going to take the time to work on your mental health?
okay. Good, good, good. So let's move into the next segment, which is the weekly sabbatical. And this is just a time to kind of reflect and just kind of as we wind down the episode. So now, considering the gender disparity in seeking mental health support, and I kind of briefly talked about this earlier. So
Yeah.
with females more likely than males, how does Blue Ivy, or not Blue Ivy? Ha! That's funny. That is funny. You can't make
I
this stuff up.
love that. She is I was at the Beyonce birthday concert and, like, she was so good. I just wanna say she was so good, and she's so tall that I literally went on my phone and was like, "Wait, is she 15? Like, how did time speed forward?" And I was like, "Wait a minute, no, she's just, like, the tallest, like, 11, 12-year-old that ever lived."
Well,
She's a
you
goddess.
know, they say girls like grow to get their height faster. My mom is tall, so she's 5'10". I think she got her height when she was like fifth, sixth grade, and it just
Yeah,
stuck.
and guys, like, take a while to, like, but that they catch up, like, but yeah, like, girls definitely, like, mature quicker, but I was like, "She's so good, and she was so tall." Sorry, Blue Ivy, big
That
fan.
was funny.
Continue.
So let's let's reword it. So considering the just gender disparity in seeking mental health support, females more likely than males.
Yeah,
How does Blue Fever approach inclusivity and support for young men? Because it caters to everybody. I get that, but
yeah.
how do you think a young man might say this is for me too? Because
Yeah,
just
great question. So, in full transparency, our app, the majority of people on our app are identify as female non-binary, right? We do have like I think that a lot of people who come to Blue Fever feel like they are other in some way, shape, or form. So that could mean they feel other again based on race, religion, sexual orientation, gender. At Blue Fever, we welcome everyone. And I think with young men, the feedback that we've gotten from young men who use the platform is that they're like, I have nowhere, I don't believe and I don't think I have anywhere else to kind of like take the load out of my head and give it to someone else to carry for a little bit and to like put it out. And that's the biggest feedback we get is like, this actually feels like a safe place where I won't get judged. And I think I'm not a man. I'm really passionate about men's mental health. And Izzy, like one of the things that made me want to come on here is that how you're talking about that. Like I think that's so, so important. And we need men to be leading the charge here for other men. And so I love that you
Thank you.
do
Thank
that.
you.
But I think that it's like young men have to feel safe that if they are going to actually let those guards come down, that they're not going to be judged. And so
Right.
that's like, I think that like we've done a really good job of creating this environment and culture within Blue Fever that no matter who you are, what you're carrying, you are welcome here and nobody's going to like call you out. Um, so I think that that's the most important thing. I know it's like kind of pretty general, but I think that like this ability to come and like really share who you are is just such a rare thing today. Like there's not a lot of spaces for it.
All right, good stuff. All right, so y'all heard that here first. So you can use Blue Fever too. Don't think it's just for women because it's for men too. All right, so now for our listeners who are struggling between professional sessions, can't afford them, what are 3 mental wellness tips that you can say that they can integrate into their daily lives starting today?
Well, first of all, I'd say there's so much free content out there. So if you can't
Yeah.
afford a therapist, I think there's a lot of great content that's free. 3 tips. I think the first is building awareness of your automatic negative thoughts. They're called ants. People often call them ants. So, like, how do you squash the? Oh, are you there? Is he? Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Sorry, it just froze. How do you squash those ants? So, building awareness of the like we think like hundreds of thousands of thoughts every day. Like, how can you build awareness of those thoughts? And one of the things that really works for me is like when my brain just starts going and going, I just stop and I just say thinking. All my brain is doing is thinking. And I just say that word and it kind of stops my brain because I'm like, this isn't like true or this isn't like what's going to happen. I just say thinking. So building awareness of those thoughts and just like catching yourself over and over and over again. And you're going to build up this like ability to like kind of stop those, that kind of like those ants from like going wild. The second thing is a gratitude practice. I'm sure people have heard this a lot, but like when you are feeling defeated, when you are feeling overwhelmed, there is nothing that can turn around your brain, like because our brain is all about momentum. It's like what it holds on to and gets momentum. Is it those negative thoughts? Is it something else? If you can change the momentum of your brain and put it towards gratitude and write down just 3 things at the end of every day, 3 things that you received. It could be as simple, or 3 things that you have. It could be as simple as like, I feel grateful that I have a bed to sleep in, right? I feel grateful that I got to see my friend today. Just like very simple things. If you start doing that, that's going to really support your mental health. And then the final tip is, gosh, there's so many.
It is.
Awareness of your thoughts, gratitude. I think that I'll say this one because I think not everybody can do this, and I'm aware because it depends on where you live. But like, if you can go out in nature at all, there's so much research that shows that just staring at like the ocean or staring at a park, right? Like it resets your brain. So if you can go out in nature and just like sit by a tree or be on the beach or whatever, like that is wildly helpful for your mental health.
Mhm.
If you don't have the ability to do that, then my kind of alternative would just be exercise. Can you move your body? I don't care what you do. Put on a song that you like and dance your heart out to that, and shake your body out, and that can really help mental health of like getting again changing the momentum and getting those like that overwhelm and stress out.
Good
Those
stuff.
would be my 3.
Good. And then some of the stuff we discussed, but the last one, I really feel like that's really the stance or the state I'm in right now in my life when you talk about the whole dancer thing. Just biblically proven, scientifically proven, psychologically proven, kind of like what you said earlier about my comment about the yet thing. You have to celebrate it as if it already happened. It talks about, several areas talking about some sacrifice of praise. You have to dance and celebrate yourself. And even if you go out and do something like I'm gonna go buy me a bottle of champagne, and when this opportunity of a lifetime comes, that's when I'm gonna open it. That you're showing faith of preparing for something that
Mhm.
hasn't even come yet. So it's just little stuff like that
Yeah.
does so
One
much.
one of if we had more time, Izzy, I would this is something I work on with my founders, but I do a lot of thought modeling. And do you know what thought modeling is? Have you ever
Yes.
done? Yeah, yeah, yeah. That has changed my life of outlining like a circumstance, a thought, a feeling, an action, and result. And then like reverse engineering a thought model, like that has been a game changer for me.
Mhm.
A game changer and kind of relates to what you're talking about of like, well, what do you want to create? And what are the thoughts you need to think and the act and therefore the actions and the feelings you need to feel in order to get to that result.
Absolutely. All right. So now, as we end off, we obviously have so much we could go into. We'll be here all day, but I do have a few apps that I think are best for overall wellness and mental health, and not just mental health, but just overall wellness that I've used. And some of them I feel like you may or may not use, but just to say, we have, of course, the resources as always. I
Yeah,
feel like
there's so many different options that are
so
out there
many.
that are awesome.
All right, so the first one is Blue Fever. Obviously, this is the best picture I could find. What was another one? It was so blurry, but Blue Fever is one of them.
And
Okay.
and I'll note that for people listening, if you fall in the age bucket of you're like in your early 20s, I'm not sure exactly what the demo is here. A lot of the people on the app are like teens and early 20s, and we find that people who are a little bit older, I'm in my early 30s, people who are a little bit older can come in and really be that like big sibling support. And so I encourage you that even if like it feels a little bit young for you, there's so many young people that need support, and when you support others, like it helps your mental health too. So there's
Absolutely.
caveat for that, so that people know what they're walking into.
Well, yeah. So this demographic is young millennial men. So I think that's good because a lot of these men we see, we'll get that is a whole nother story. But a lot of these men we see just that know personally and just on these platforms, you can tell needed that guidance and still do. So if we
Yeah.
can catch them
Think about your
early,
younger self. Think about your younger
right?
self and what they needed to hear.
And
Totally.
that's a testament to you because you said I always wanted like that bigger sibling to be that
Yeah.
guide, and now you've created it for thousands and millions
Yeah.
of people. So
I think
shout
what
out
you
to you.
most want for yourself, like, you go out and create for others, right? Like, that's what I find.
No, definitely. Good job. Good stuff. All right. The third one is the Bible app. I'm telling y'all, there's been times I done got decrees and verses that were literally specific to what I was going through in that moment. God is real. Get you the Bible app. I'm telling you to change your life. Um, My Fitness Pal is a good one. Now, this one was the one I've talked about it several times on this podcast of losing weight. So, while primarily a fitness nutrition app, My Fitness Pal can contribute to overall wellness. It helps users track their physical activity, nutrition, and sleep, which can help have a significant impact on mental health. Now, this has helped me stay on track with my food. Now, for those who may have struggled with losing weight or may want to, this is a great starter. I'm telling you from experience. This app alone, I lost over 40 pounds because it helps you to
Oh,
stay on it, and it'll say stuff like, that's a lot of sugar for today. You think you need any? Like it's funny like that, but it really needed. So keep that in mind. All right, this is the Dailyo app. Okay, so this app has been used is a mood tracking and journaling app that helps users record their daily emotions and activities, and it helps users gain insights into their emotional patterns and identify triggers. This is a great start before you do go to Blue Fever. You can mix the two together. No, you don't have to just use one app. You can use several. So you can use all of these. This is just a start. So hopefully you can maybe go on the app store and just kind of type in some things and just kind of, go from there like that. Okay, so good stuff. All right, so we're going to end off with the question and challenge for the week. So for my people, how do you plan to use what you already have to get you where you need to be? Little typo. But how do you plan to use what you already have? Now, we got these phones, we talked about them. They're not always the devil. They can be used properly. These apps, there are resources for you. Podcasts exist. YouTube channels, exist. YouTubers, because they're not podcasts, not always YouTube. You know what I mean? Books exist. I should have talked about the Audible app, but oh well.
oh,
Um,
Audible's so killer, yeah. Audible, and then finding the right influencers to follow on TikTok and Instagram, right? Like, there's a lot of, like, stuff out there that's not great, but there's some really amazing people, to follow.
for sure. So, thank you for this episode. Anything you want to add or leave with the people before you go?
Um I think I just want to say, one, Izzy, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for creating a place for young millennial men to talk about mental health. It's so important. And then I applaud everybody who's listening. Like, just you're working on yourself, and that's something you should be really proud of, and keep going, and keep growing. And I think that's it. And thank you so much for having me and spending some time.
All right, thank you for coming on. So, y'all, we got to tune into another great episode next week. I think I might be in the studio. We're gonna see. So, we're gonna see what the finances can provide. So, as always, PSA signing out. Always remember, keep your head up like your neck hurts. Remember who you are. Make your mind up. Don't let it make you. And remember, I love us for real.